Hello, everybody. This is Rik Turner from Omdia. I'm Principal Analyst on the Cybersecurity team at Omdia, which as you probably know is a sister company of Black Hat and light reading, dark reading, and all those other readings. And no, I'm not speaking to you from some glorious desert island somewhere in the Pacific, lamentably. But nonetheless, here we go. I wanted to speak to you today about a particular technology, cloud security technology of great interest to us at the moment, which I am calling cloud permissions management. There we go. That's it. Right. Let me give you a little bit of a background, first of all, about cloud security more generally. You may well be aware of these couple of terms, CSPM, CWPP, both of which were coined by my illustrious competitor Gartner. And CSPM, as its name suggests, security posture, effectively what you're doing is you're saying, okay, this is a snapshot of what this application, this workload should be doing. Looking at it, though, I can see that it's able to do other things. That, in other words, the configuration has slipped slightly because it's changed over time. It has therefore fallen out of compliance with particular legislation in a given jurisdiction, or that change in the config has in some way or other introduced vulnerabilities that could be exploited. So let us take it back, revert back to what? Factory settings, shall we say, so that it's once again compliant and secure. CWPP, quite simply, is technology that sits somewhere in the environment, in a cloud estate, shall we say, of a company, and says, this looks decidedly like an attack on that workload, so let's block it. So it's basically just reacting to those to anything that appears to be an attack on that particular code base there. Now, as you will therefore have concluded, both of those technologies, both of them are reactive. In the case of CSPM, it's reacting to what? Config drift, compliance drift, changes that have made the thing less secure, less compliant, and reverting back to where they should be. And CWPP, well, quite straightforward there. You're just there, sitting there reacting to when you're seeing anything that looks like an attack, so as to secure that particular application, workload, call it what we will. But what about a proactive approach to security, given that zero trust is very much the spirit of the age, the zeitgeist and all that? Well, let me throw a few numbers at you. First of all, and these are not my numbers, but I'm pretty sure that they are in the right ballpark. Somebody calculated that across the big three CSPs, in other words, what? That's cloud service providers, so AWS, Azure, and GCP. And if you add in VMware vSphere to give all the vast majority of the on-prem virtualized environments, so private cloud environments, if you will, that as many as 40,000 permissions are grantable within those environments. And of that 40,000, about half are high risk, as defined at the bottom here. In other words, can it cause disruption, degradation of the service, or indeed does it enable data exfiltration? That's a high risk permission that's been granted. Then 50% of those 40,000, and just as interestingly, of this the same study found that roughly 90% of the identities that were to whom the permissions had been granted were only actually ever using 5% of them. So in other words, there were an enormous number of permissions that were being granted that were just simply hanging around waiting for someone to use them, just not being used at all. Akin, if you will, to cutting 100 copies of your house key, distributing them to people that you know are in your environment, They then putting your name and address on a tag on that key, hanging it in their cupboard, never using it again, waiting for somebody to break into their house, find your key, and be able to break into yours as well. Clearly, this is a situation which merits, shall we say, some attention in terms of reduction of the attack surface that you are making available to potential threat actors. Enter CPM, Cloud Permissions Management, which, as its name suggests, is technology that comes into your cloud environment, discovers, firstly, all of the extant permissions. Just having a cup of tea here. Once it's discovered all those extant permissions, it will then make recommendations about how best they be reined in for security purposes. And if you so desire, some of the CPM platforms out there can actually go a step further and say, okay, I've recommended this. Is that okay with you? Right, you hit a button and away you go. It carries out the curtailment of those permissions. It reins in that permissive environment in which your cloud infrastructure is working so as to reduce your attack surface. This is a little Brit joke here. Other brands are available is the way that the BBC, which as you probably know, does not carry advertising here in the UK. And the Beeb, when it does announce, it has to, for I say in a news program or something, announce the name of a brand like, I don't know, Kellogg's or Hoover or one of these. It's always obliged but, legally to say, but of course, other brands are also available. And indeed, there are other brands, shall we say, for CPM. Gartner, in their wisdom, came up with Cloud Infrastructure Entitlements Management, which number one is a mouthful, a bit unwieldy, therefore, but also I find confusing in as much as it's very similar to Security Incident Event Management. I think it's Incident and Event Management, SIM, which is a very well known security acronym, or alternatively to Cloud Identity and Access Management, CIAM. So why bring in another four-letter acronym that looks and sounds so much like them? Not a good one, I'm afraid, Gartner. On that particular one, I think you've rather let yourselves down. But anyway, the other one is Cloud Identity Governance, which is, I think I'm right saying, a Forresterism. That's all right, but it's a bit high level. Doesn't really tell you what it does. I think Cloud Permissions Management does a better job on the tin, as it were, of saying what it does. Anyway, moving on, as is so typical with a new technology, particularly in security, it tends initially to come out of a bunch of startups. Here's a selection of some of the startups offering this technology. CloudKnox amongst these is, I think I'm right in saying, the oldest, or the longest, the one's been around longest, and probably the, I don't want to call it market leader, but perhaps the one with greatest brand recognition. But these are some of the other names that you'll find in this sector. However, as also is pretty common with new technologies, some of the larger players have started to move in, and this doesn't surprise me. I don't think CPM will remain as a standalone business for very long. I think there'll be a lot more acquisition going on, or maybe people developing it internally, but it makes a lot of sense for other players. I mean, CyberArk was a classic one. They are, as you probably know, the big name, the big beast in privileged access management. Why wouldn't they also have a CPM product to start reining in some of them cloud permissions and privileges? Salesforce, clearly Salesforce want to rein in permissions for all people who can access Salesforce environments, the sales and the CRM database that you hold in their infrastructure. Zscaler, interestingly, is also, they actually are the only ones I've seen so far who bought another one of them little startups. I didn't have them on the first list, but Trustdome were also, they've been around since 2019, but they already got acquired by Zscaler. And Attivo, not quite on the same scale as the first three here, but Attivo is also a player. They come from the world of deception technology, but they've expanded beyond that. And they too are just launching a CPM product almost as we speak. So you can see that, as typical with technologies, they come out of the weeds or out of the long grass in startups, but then a few people start saying, that's an interesting technology, we ought to have one of those. They either develop it or they go out and buy it. That, I think, it concludes my discussion of CPM. If you want to see any more about it, hear any more about it, see anything I've written about it, give me a shout, and you can find me via Omdia. You'll know where to look. Okay, guys, thank you very much indeed. And that is me. Speak soon. Cheers all.